Shannon and the Clams, The Moon is in the Wrong Place. Album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest album from Shannon and the Clams, Oakland-based band, and for many years one of rock's best kept secrets, and a band that I have loved for many years. Now, growing up in a house where I enjoyed both, the very sweaty, very punky energy of the California garage psych and garage rock scene, but also had a real soft spot for vintage pop, vintage soul, and vintage surf. Hearing Shannon and the Clams put those two things together really excited me, and in the early days, albums like I Want to Go Home and Sleep Talk just excited the hell out of me, even if they were a little bit lo-fi, and there were some odd moments in the later moments there. But honestly, the band really improved their sound over the years and continued to push themselves with the fantastic Dreams in the Rat House album. This album just clicked with me instantly the first time that I heard it. This, to me, was the band's punchiest tunes to date, their most infectious hooks, and just a really good medium as far as their production sounded. Now, I knew at one point the band would clean up their sound a little bit more, which they did with 2015's Gone by Dawn, and I'm gonna be honest, I was not a fan of the record. I thought it was a little too polished in parts, and the band just didn't sound comfortable with it being that polished. The songwriting also was far from the band's best, but I did stick around. I did, keep my high hopes that they could polish up their sound and sound great doing it, which they did with Onion. This album to me was just the band polishing their sound up the right way. Mostly because the band just sounded passionate about it. They were writing some of their best tunes like Love Strike and The Boy. Now, the last time we heard from them with Year of the Spider, I thought they put out one of the year's best records. It was shiny and it was glossy, but it was also just incredibly heartfelt, produced really well. It had a lot of nods to psychedelic soul as well. Not only that, the band just sounded like they were operating on all cylinders, and I couldn't wait to hear what they would do next. And then they released this album here, and I'm gonna be honest, leading up to this thing, I was shocked by how much I wasn't enjoying the singles, and this time around, I fear that the band is just not trying that much. Now, I will say this. Thank goodness, some of the deep cuts really do pick up the slack for just how not interesting a lot of the singles were leading up to this thing. Like this album's intro, The Vow. This track is really classy. It's sunny, it's soulful, it's passionate, it's got that great attention to detail as well. Some of the added percussion is really nice, and the band as a whole just sounds kind of where I want to hear them. I love the campy synths, I love Shannon Shaw's vocals, I love the sort of Twilight atmosphere as well. Overall, like this, as an intro, this is exactly what I want to hear from the band. All that with just the right amount of glitz and pomp and circumstance. The Hourglass, really good as well. Love this track's urgency. I honestly needed to hear it early on in the record. It's a much more hectic and upbeat track with a lot of campiness. And honestly, I really love it. Shannon's bluesy vocals are really great. I just can't say no to tracks like this, and it's just the right amount of weird. Oh, so close, yet so far. Once again, this is the kind of track from Shannon and the Clams that I can't say no to. It's soulful, it's sweet, it's just so full of love, and I really do love the very visual lyrics. It's got an old soul to it, but this is just such an effective, old school, emotional blast of love. And so much of this track just puts me in a good mood. It makes me smile. UFO is also a huge standout for me. This is one of my favorite deep cuts here. Once again, I love the overt campiness of this track. It's something that I will always love to hear from Shannon and the Clams. But they also back that up with an awesome hook and great attention to detail once again. Not only that, but the harmonies on this track just work so well. And What You're Missing, God, is so cheesy, but it is so freaking adorable as well. Once again, Shannon and the Clams, when they are on, they have a way of just putting a big smile on my face, and that's what they do here. Now, we'll get into some of the later tracks here that sadly come off like covers, but this has the opposite effect. This has the kind of sound of the 70s radio rock I would have grown up on, and honestly, it's done really well. However, as this album goes on, honestly, I'm shocked by how inconsistent it is this time around. Like I said, a lot of the singles to this album really did just discourage me from being excited about this thing, like Big Wheel. A A lot of these tracks also that were released as singles have pretty big pros and cons. I mean, let's look at the pros first. It is upbeat. It is definitely freaky. It's got that sense of urgency to it. And it's great to hear Shannon and the Clams freak out a little. It also shows them playing to that psychedelic soul sound, which I love. But the songwriting here has taken such a huge nosedive. We have gone from a tasteful throwback to what sounds like a dad rock cover. All that plus the brass in the background just comes off more annoying than it should. I am just as torn on Real or Magic. This was the first single that I heard leading up to this album, and honestly, it left me pretty disappointed. I mean, the pros, once again, Shannon's vocals and lyrics on this track are so unbelievably sincere and emotional and heartfelt. Right on. Also, really love the Twilight atmosphere. But instrumentally, this is beyond boring. This is not light or delicate. This is just, honestly, really clumsy and awkward. I just feel like this track should have been done so much more effectively. I'm just as split on The Moon Is in the Wrong Place, this album's title track. Once again, the frantic nature of this track is great, especially halfway through this pretty sleepy album at times. Also, once again, love hearing the band freak out a little. Once again, songwriting just seems to be the least of anyone's concerns on this track. It's just really sloppy. This album overall is not really consistent for Shannon and the Clams, and the rest of this album is just as divisive. Like So Lucky, the atmosphere on this track is absolutely immaculate. The sort of woozy, psychedelic soul of this track is really intoxicating. But once again, everything else here is just not up to stuff. Lyric-wise, this is not the band's strongest effort. We're going in the wrong direction, and because of that, I get the feeling that we've been here before many times. I really do love Dalí's Clock, though. This is one of the most fun tracks here. It's upbeat, it's whimsical. Once again, this shows Shannon and the Clams letting loose. And yeah, it's not wildly bold or anything, but honestly, I had a blast with it. A lot of the same feelings on Beanfields. I mean, if any single on this album's cycle kind of turned me around to listen to this record, it would definitely be this one. It's incredibly joyous, it's sweet, and yeah, this album isn't as sweaty in parts that I hoped it would be. And you can argue that this track's a little cheesy, but my toe is tapping. In the Grass is also a tremendous deep cut. This is an old school, nothing fancy, just straightforward ballad, and it is done in the right way. It's a sort of alternative country leading track. It reminds me a lot, honestly, of Shannon's solo stuff, like that Shannon in Nashville album. And the heart on display here, and the sincerity, and once again, the incredibly visual lyrics are pretty stunning. It's an amazing deep cut. I just wish that they brought this amount of effort to some of the other tracks here. Like Golden Brown, I think this is the worst track here. I mean, take the sounds of this album and Year of the Spider and make them just so less passionate and interesting, and that's what this is. The energy is down, and I'm just shocked at how phoned in some of these deep cuts are. And Life is Unfair as a finale, it's just as middle of the road as the bulk of this record. On one hand, lyrically, I'm actually stunned by how genuinely sincere and personal these lyrics are. And Shannon's performance, it's heartfelt as anything. But everything else about this track, from the backing vocals to the production to this instrumental, just seems really phoned in. These tracks just feel very incomplete and just not really up to snuff for where the band has been. I mean, since the band has polished up their sound a little, I mean, they've really gotten back on track and found a way to make it work. And a lot of this record, you know, it's certainly fun and shows the band freaking out a little, getting a little campy, which is something that I'll always love. But so many of these tracks here just feel wildly incomplete, and this album is easily the most inconsistent thing they've done in quite some time, honestly. I'm feeling a light 6 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.